don't know if you are, actually.
Welcome to the Chaffin Church podcast. My name is Martin Holman, or Marty Holman for short, or that big dummy.
That's a good question. Do you prefer Marty or Martin?
So my author name is Martin. However, people normally call me Marty. I tried in college to have people call me Martin, and they did for a while. A lot of females call me Martin, and most males call me Marty. I don't know why that is. I don't know if that's or at least that was like that in college. I just kind of succumbed to the Marty. But this is Ryan Thompson.
So, but when I intro you on the podcast, would you like me to call you Marty or Martin? Like, how much do you like our audience? Because if, like, you want to keep things all stiff and formal, maybe you go with Martin. But if you actually like them and actually love them for who they really are, maybe you'll go with Marty.
So I just want to say
I'm not leading you in any
that you're
direction.
leading, and you are a male, a privileged male. So therefore,
yes, I did say that in the last episode. That's
so
right.
Therefore, you like Marty apparently.
Yeah, there you go, Marty.
It's definitely more informal, right?
Plus, then when your dad comes to town, I call you Martin, and I get confused.
Except his name is Marty. He also goes by Marty. Most people call him Marty or Pastor Marty or Pastor.
Well, it's funny because around here, when he would come and speak, I felt like everyone around here would call him Martin. But I don't know. Is that not true? Maybe it was just me.
I think Pastor Marty is usually what people end up calling him.
Well, you guys got to work that out because the rest of us over here, we're a little confused.
I have a good question for you.
Okay.
Do you like community cookouts?
Yeah, community cookouts are awesome.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We have this thing at our church, at Chaffin Church, called Community Cookouts. And every week, every Thursday during the summer, people come together and we just have a cookout. We just hang out. So we've had it at the Cohanes, at Alba Irizarry's house, the Dancy's, the Rogers, here at Chaffin Church. The Greens hosted one here. That was a pizza party. And I've seen you at a few of them. Look like you have, but you're kind of a quiet individual sometimes.
I do get quiet sometimes.
And I sense that you're reading the room. So when you're reading the room, I'm reading you.
Yeah, I do. I do read the room before I just charge in and start saying things. You're right.
That's not a bad thing. Like, not everybody has to be me. So, sometimes when I make that sound, like this morning I was listening to Maddie in the Morning, the show on Kiss 108, because I was in the van driving around Worcester, and they laughed and they had this like so natural like bantering going back and forth. And then when I just laughed, I felt so unnatural. I sounded more like Mrs. Doubtfire. And I don't want to sound like Mrs.
Doubtfire. My mom is obsessed with that movie, by the way.
Really?
Like, it's literally her favorite movie. Yeah.
Really?
I thought it was a good movie. I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's good.
My wife likes it very much. She talks about it a lot. And she wants to someday show our kids when they're old enough. And I have yet to tell her that I have not watched the whole thing.
Oh, really?
I have not watched the whole thing.
No, it's good. It's good.
Just for reasons unknown, I just haven't watched them. So you like them. You like to hang out.
And this one is actually, and I don't want to steal your thunder for announcements later, but this one is going to be right down the street from where I live. So
by the time we put this out, it will be past tense. So I wasn't even going to say that.
I keep forgetting that like we're recording these and they're going to launch in a few days.
Yeah.
Because that one is actually tonight. That community cookout is tonight, as in tonight for us. It's not tonight for you. When you hear this, where is that one again?
The one for next week?
The one for Future Ryan and Future Marty.
Oh, Future. I believe it's at Future Marty's house.
Really?
I know it's coming up. So that would be, the 22nd. And I'm almost certain it will be at Future Martin and Future Marty and Future Carrie's house. And
Martin.
See, that's natural bantering. That's That's natural branding. I like it so much.
Okay. I'm gonna catch you every time you say it now. We're gonna say Marty.
Oh man.
Okay.
So it's funny. Never mind. I'm not going to bring that up. But I tell you what, I will bring up a story that happened to me, and it will transition into our conversation today. This week, so I was talking earlier about being in a van. This week, I'm helping Darlene Layton, who is the food service director at Friendly House in Worcester.
And just real quick, just for context for this story,
Yeah,
what does Friendly House do?
they are essentially a nonprofit organization that that helps meet educational needs and social needs of kids and adults in need in the Worcester area. Okay, so I don't exactly have their mantra down, but I will say that they do a great job in meeting social needs, and the food service program actually feeds kids lunches all throughout Worcester, and breakfast and lunch all throughout Worcester in parks and in other nonprofit organizations like Boys and Girls Clubs and whatnot. And so that's what I do. That's kind of, I take lunches, I transfer lunches to those nonprofit organizations.
And you are a volunteer for Friendly House.
So no, I'm not in the summers. I have volunteered, like during COVID I volunteered.
Okay.
But in the summer, I actually do it as a driver. And they actually have means to pay the drivers and pay their workers there. So it's a whole system of a summer program.
Okay.
I think that the state in some way, Massachusetts, helps and to take care of that.
Gotcha.
So on Monday, it rained, cats and dogs, and it was coming down hard. Like, of course, Friday was the hurricane. On Monday, it was just coming down so hard. And so sometimes when I'm driving anywhere, I take my phone and I put it underneath my leg for reasons only known to me, and even me, I have a hard time figuring out why I do that. And so I had it underneath my leg, and sometimes I forget about it and I get out of the vehicle, and I do the thing that whatever I have to do. So I think that's what happened. I got out, I took the coolers to the girls' club on Providence Street in Worcester. Beautiful building there, right in the Vernon Hill area. So we get in, and I realize I don't have my phone. So I'm like, oh, I don't know where my phone is. Once again, it's pouring. So I don't get out of the car. I don't think about it being out of the car. Mm-hmm. I then ask the kid who's next to me to text the food service director, Darlene, and see if she has it in the other van. We had changed vans.
Okay.
And so during that time, I drove thinking, oh, it's probably in the other van. And we drove to the next location. So we get to the next location, which was a Catholic church, or like a center for kids,
right,
at a Catholic church there on Vernon Street. And we take the cooler in and all that, we realize the phone is not with us. And Darlene calls back and says the phone is not there. So I'm like, all right. Well, all of a sudden, I realize the phone is not around because my Apple Watch is not connected to my phone. And before it was. So I'm like, oh, it almost has to be back there. I bet I dropped it. So we went back to the girls' club, and lo and behold, I see a shiny object on the ground in the midst of the rain. We go out and get it, and it has 15 lines. Like it's just... And
ba, ba, ba.
yeah, oh yeah, it's not good. It's not good. And it's cracked everywhere. And I realized the first time I left, I drove over it in this Ford U-Haul.
Now I have to ask, did you create a small yellow tape outline around where the phone was? And did you cover it with a sheet so that the media couldn't take pictures of it? It was so gory and horrible.
It was disgusting. Nobody likes to see that. And so for a while I thought, it might still work even though there's a lot of cracks.
Mm-hmm.
But then the 15 lines turned into that deep dark blackness that nobody wants to see. And so it has been now 72 hours at the present filming, 72 hours since I've had my phone. I do have my iPad, and I do have my Apple Watch, which is not helping at all in terms of this communication. And of course, I can check my voicemails. But what that has done, and what I want to do today, is talk about how phones, and maybe to a more specific degree, the social media has impacted our lives. And I don't necessarily want to talk about it positively, because what I'm realizing, even now, even in the last 72 hours, is how much, first of all, how much I've reached for my pocket.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the first 24 hours was like, I think I told you this before. I just kept reaching for it. I just kept trying to take it out. I had no reason for it. There was no reason. There was nothing, no one trying to communicate with me that I knew of. I would just go after my pocket.
Yeah.
And so here we are in a world, now that I have time to process, in a world where people are first of all on their phone and not being present, where many times parents are ignoring their kids, and I'm not judging, because where my own kids are going, Daddy, are you going to be off your phone yet? Well, they haven't said that in the last 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I even talked to them about this, and my oldest daughter, Scarlett, said, well, Daddy, you still have your iPad. And I'm like, yeah, but there is work that needs to be done.
Like every story I hear, your kids are like, they're really hard.
They are. Well, they have high expectations, and we put that into them too.
I mean, it's tough love, but it's still tough.
It's tough, right? And so that's where we're at, and that's what I want to discuss today on this. Now, what is your first take on what I've said so far?
Well, as someone who has removed himself from all social media, other than LinkedIn, and that's an exception, we might get into that a little bit later, but I removed myself from all social media that exists for personal purposes, rather. As someone who's done that, I can tell you that my life is better now than it was before I removed myself from those social networks. And so I don't think that's necessarily a one-size-fits-all, but I think the standard way that Americans use social media is causing many issues, mental health issues, relational issues, and data privacy issues. So my take is that the effects of social media in our lives are predominantly negative.
So 2 questions. And maybe I can only remember one, but I'll say the first one first. You said Americans. Is that because this is where you live, or do you have data backed on? Because when I've gone to other countries, there are tons of people from other countries on their phone all the time.
Yeah, and really, I guess it was just a poor choice of words. I think, these are almost entirely American companies. You have TikTok based in China, right? You have a few others that are, I think there was one based in India. Was it Snapchat is US? No, yeah, I don't know. But most of the big social media companies are US based. So maybe there's a little something to that, but you're right. This is worldwide. We're not just talking about Americans here.
Yeah. Okay. So the second question is this: do you think it's a phone issue, or is there something specifically about social media?
Yeah. So and I was going to go into this later, but I'll bring up this point now. I think it is predominantly, for me at least, and this may not be true for everyone, but for me, it's definitely a social media issue, because I still have my phone and I use it daily, but really, like, the things I'm using it for, like reminders, calendar, calculator. I do, text messages, some email, if it's a short email that I can just very quickly read through. But like now I'm using my phone like 15 minutes a day, maybe 20 on a heavy usage day. Whereas before I was using my phone for several hours, and so, but even the things that I use my phone for, again, every app we use has trade-offs, right? It has advantages and disadvantages. Now, I'm kind of locked into the Google ecosystem, so I use Gmail and Calendar and all that stuff on Google.
Yeah.
And so when you use Google Cloud products, you are trading, or at least the personal side, not the business side, but if you use Google Cloud products for personal, the trade-off is data privacy, right?
Correct.
Like you're allowing Google's algorithms to use your data to pitch you advertising. And so, the product is not, Google, Gmail or Google Calendar.
Yeah.
We are the product being marketed to companies, our advertising attention, right? And so now for Google, I think that's worth it, because the level of quality of these Google products, and Google products, as far as I know, are not designed to cause addiction to the product, right? Like their Google Calendar and email. Now, personally, I need some sort of digital calendar to just live these days. I would just be an absent-minded fool without them. And before I got on Google Calendar when I was in college, I regularly was. And so so that sort of relates to social media, right? And we'll get into this a little bit, but the trade-offs are more drastic. And so like the benefits that you get out of social media, that level of connection is majorly offset by these other factors. And I don't want to get too deep into that yet. But
well, I think it's the difference between being the tool and using a tool, right? Like a lot of the Google things, I think you're right. You are using really high value tools. However, when we are flipping through social media, and maybe this is the direction we can head, there are things that happen to you. There are things that happen to me and they engineer them this way, right? To draw our attention in and to keep us enveloped into this ecosystem. And we can start with Facebook.
Yeah.
Where they want our attention. They want us to be in there. And I remember in 2000s, I mean, you have a story. I think you were on it. Well, maybe we got on it about the same time, but in two different ways, right? I mean, you kind of grew up into this as a young kid, and I was learning about this as a young adult, and it was just amazing. Like my eyes were like, wow, this is. I remember classmates.com, right, which was something interesting. Oh, I haven't seen some of these people, but all of a sudden, but you had to pay for that. And then Facebook.com brought this into our lives, and we wanted to get back in touch with those people. And so people just thronged to Facebook. And you're not on Facebook at all now.
No, I'm not on any personal social media, so I'm not on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. I'm not on any of that. So
it must be destroying your life.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people told me that. Like that was their reaction. But yeah, I think you brought up a good point there about like these products are literally designed to dig neural pathways into our brain through the use of like dopamine. So for instance, like the news feed, like how it's endlessly scrolling,
right?
And the reason it's endlessly scrolling and the reason you get like hooked onto that is because some of those things you see, like it might cause you to laugh or see someone you haven't seen in a while, but some of them, it's like you feel like you have to keep going to keep accomplishing. And then when you swipe to the top, that little elastic motion, you know what I mean, and that little pinwheel comes up, the little spinny pinwheel, and that is all designed to take advantage of dopamine in our brain. And I don't want to get like too deep into the science or anything here, but like basically the theory is the human brain, there are 4 primary happy chemicals. Okay, so there's and the acronym to remember it is EDSO, EDSO. Endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. Marty's literally checking Facebook as we are talking.
Well, I wanted to. I'm thinking about some of these things
The
that you said.
emotion.
Yeah.
Well, so those are the 4 primary happy chemicals, and the 2 that social media sort of tend to bring the most out of a person is dopamine by far. That's the highest. And again, I'm talking about people, scientists doing blood tests on people as they are using social media. So this is how they know how they're triggering these chemicals and the levels of those chemicals.
Wow.
And then oxytocin is the other one. Dopamine is sort of like before a dopamine inducing event, it can motivate you.
Yeah.
And then after a dopamine inducing event, it's sometimes it can be described as like a feeling of achievement. And that feeling of achievement you can get addicted to. And then so again, that's the most common chemical reaction that's happening in your brain when pretty much anyone is using social media. And then the other one is oxytocin, and oxytocin is sort of like the community chemical or the cooperation chemical.
Yeah.
Some people associate it with the warm and fuzzies that you get when you're close with someone. But literally, like oxytocin is the chemical that helped to build human civilization on this planet, and without it, humans never would have formed into tribes, and then groups of tribes, and then nations, and then empire. None of those things would have happened without oxytocin. But it's funny, like when Facebook markets their product, right? And I think I used this example with you when we were talking the other day. The commercial that I regularly see is it's a Facebook group for deaf basketball players, and it's all on Hulu. Whenever I'm watching Hulu with the ads, that's the one that comes up over and over and over again. And I think you're supposed to get this warm and fuzzy feeling from just watching the commercial, right? That these deaf basketball players can have their own little group. And I think on some level we are supposed to believe that that they wouldn't have that without Facebook. And so that's sort of like just an example. They're playing on the oxytocin thing, but really, again, it's the dopamine that keeps bringing us back again and again. Like when I was on social media, I would reach for my phone. I wasn't even conscious of how many times per day I would open my phone, take my phone out of my pocket, and just check that blue little icon, and there would be a little red, number up at the top right, and all of those things have been wired into my brain to the point where when I left social media in September of 2020, September 1st, 2020, I think it was a whole month, maybe even 2 months, I would take up my phone and I would think to myself, I have to do something with my phone. I don't know what it is, but I feel like I have to do something with my phone right now. And then I would realize that I was actually looking for the Facebook icon because that neural pathway was written into my brain, from all those dopamine hits over the years. And I just couldn't get away from it. And so I'm taking out my phone for essentially no reason. I feel like I'm one of Pavlov's dogs. Like, it's just really, really crazy.
Were you the one who told me that was it the other night, who told me that if I decided to get off social media, that there's a way to have emails sent, or was that somebody else?
That was me. So and we can definitely get into that.
Here's what, before, I know what you're going to say.
Yeah.
But I'm getting those emails, and I've just not had my phone for 3 days, 72 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't request anything. I haven't asked for anything, and I'm getting a flood of things that would normally go into my social media, and they're going to my email automatically. Right? Like I didn't ask, I didn't request. Facebook, Hulu, ESPN, a ton of my apps are currently sending me emails, and I didn't ask or request any of them. They're brand new. They're brand new in the last 2 days.
Yeah, there must be some algorithm trying to get you to, to come back on. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So when I left social media, I did the fire sale. I'm just done. I'm gonna get off of
Cold
everything.
turkey.
Yeah. And so I got rid of everything all at once. Now it wasn't super sudden. I actually I decided at the beginning of August of last year
Right. Yep.
that I was going to leave, and
Yep.
so once a week I sent out a Facebook post that said, "Hey, just to let you know, I'm going to be leaving on September 1st. I'm just going to send out a couple of these posts just so that people know that if you don't find me on your friends list, I haven't blocked you. And I was actually just messaging Marty about this the other day.
Yeah.
And I kind of dropped a joke. I told him, he was like, "Oh, should I maybe leave social media?" And I said, "Well, it's just a couple clicks and a bunch of phone calls from your friends that are mad at you because you blocked them away."
Yeah.
That is because that's what happened. So even though I did 4 posts saying, "Hey, I'm getting rid of Facebook. I'm getting rid of Facebook," on September 1st. And I know there's a weird, ridiculous irony about making a Facebook post to say you're getting rid of your Facebook. And there is actually a really funny College Humor video about that, by the way.
I actually don't have a problem with it. If you then follow through with that. What I see is a lot of people do that, and what I almost make fun of is a lot of people do that. Like, I'm taking a break, and they don't take a break. They actually, I've literally just a few weeks ago, I saw somebody say, "Hey, I'm going on a month-long fast," and then a week later there was a rush of new, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, you sent out a post," and I looked back to see if that person deleted it, and they hadn't.
Yeah.
And it's just so, and that just shows you how this was a pastor. So there is a character issue there, how addictive this is, and how addictive it can be. So props to you for going cold turkey and being off.
Well, what Facebook in particular, what they actually do is, and this is just really bad. So what they do is they give you 90 days after you delete your Facebook account where you can still come back on and all of your data will just magically reappear.
Oh man.
So you have 90 days and I think they have figured out that if they give people 90 days, a lot of people will come back before the 90 days is up. So this is a way that they can, keep those, those subscribers, those regular users. Because again, Facebook makes their money. We all know this, but I'm just going to say this so that we can all penetrate our ears here.
Yeah.
So Facebook makes their money, almost all of their money, through advertising. And I think last year it was like $18 billion or something they made just through advertising on the Facebook platform. Predominantly that is companies or individuals who want to promote themselves will pay Facebook to have ads, and you can target those ads to particular subsets of people.
Yeah.
And so that is how Facebook makes their money. So when you leave Facebook, right, this is a financial loss for Facebook. Maybe it's only a couple dollars a year for them, but if enough people leave, again, you're talking about $17 billion of business in a year just from the advertising. I'm sure they have other income streams. And of course they have multiple platforms, right? That's just from Facebook,
Right.
So, yeah.
And then the more money that they're making, the more they can spend keeping you on the platform.
Right.
Right? I mean, and so obviously they have the world's best engineers, some of those, the world's best engineers, the world's best people.
Mm-hmm.
brightest minds out of Harvard and all the big league colleges and engineering schools, and they hire them, and then they target us. And so it very well is a huge manipulation. And that we've allowed.
Yeah,
I mean,
we've allowed it. And see, initially, and this is actually part of Mark Zuckerberg's story. You can read all about this. So he sort of accidentally stumbled onto these ways where you can sort of take advantage of people's addiction to their own dopamine response. By the way, that dopamine response is the same chemical that courses through veins of opiate addicts and all sorts of drug addicts. And so, but they're higher. So Mark Zuckerberg may have stumbled upon that accidentally, right? Or maybe his engineers did, and he just talked about it. But now they literally hire behavioral psychologists to help them do this more. How can we get people like literally addicted to that good feeling? It's very similar to Coca-Cola and Pepsi adding caffeine to their products,
Yeah.
and they sort of do it stealthily. It's not written big on the label or on the box. It's written in tiny print, like way below the nutrition label. Caffeine content equals whatever 33 milligrams or whatever it is per can.
Yep.
And people are like, oh, I feel good when I have a Coke. I feel good when I have a Pepsi, right? It's because it has caffeine in it, right? And
Right.
so it's more than just the taste of the product. And I think for Facebook, it's very similar. It's so much more than just an online directory, right? And I think in our minds, that's what we sort of think of Facebook as. This is an online directory where I can just sort of like keep up with my friends and everything.
Yeah.
But there is so much going on, like kind of like the iceberg. 90% of it is below the water, right?
Yeah.
I think that's what we have here. We only see that 10% of the iceberg above the water, and there's so much more.
So a question I just thought of that I think is a really interesting ethical issue is if this is going on, if we know, and we know that we are in some way the tools, and we are we are being held captive in not physically but emotionally and whatnot, then how ethical is it, or not? I guess this is a longer discussion, but for churches to use Facebook, right, and to be a part of that community, and organizations. I mean, everybody uses social media. One of the things I'm thinking of, even me taking a step off now that I've been away from my phone for a few days, is, all right, well, do I still need to keep my accounts for church marketing, right? And so how does that look? I mean, what do you think?
I don't even have a good answer for that, because on the one hand, I think a lot of churches, well, just organizations in general across the spectrum, not just religious organizations.
Correct.
Facebook marketing, even just Facebook, but social media marketing as well as a whole, that is a major portion of many people's portfolios. You kind of got the Google marketing thing, which it's not really based on addiction, but there's other issues with that we can talk about in another episode. But but Facebook, that you're right. I don't know that I have a good answer to that, other than to say most of the pastors that I talk to, or people in general who have gotten off Facebook, a lot of them have to use social media at their workplace, have to have a work Facebook account or access a work Facebook account to do this advertising. And so it's sort of like, well, it's there, it's not going away, even though I've left it, So it's like, it's a very tricky thing that, I don't know, what do you think?
So I've been as I think about it, I wonder, the science says, and they're using science, right? Or sociology, if you will.
Yeah.
To connect and affect. Now, organizations have done this, including the church, for years, for maybe all of history, right? They find an advantage. Let's use the Catholic Church as an example. The systematic way in which they do the same things over and over. They build a system, and once again, this is not me judging. This is just when you go into a Catholic church, so the message is that this is of God, and so you are getting essentially the same thing. So you're getting what I would guess the group connect as you go in to Catholic Church, and you are connecting to God in that way, right? And every day or every week you go into a Catholic church, you're essentially getting the same experience, that connection to God. So organizations, Christian and otherwise, have done this for years. So now that science knows it, and now that the general population knows it, is it wrong? Is it right? People still smoke. Everybody in the world knows, including teenagers at this point, that there are major addiction issues with smoking. It's no longer like, in the movies in the 40s and 50s, everybody did it. It was just kind of the cool thing to do. And it launched into an epidemic of smoking. So then we have a scenario where knowledge is power. I still drink soda. I know it's there. I know there's a way in which it's addictive. So I guess it's the now what? Now what do we do? It's not a sin to get on Facebook.
No, it's not.
It's not a sin, right? It's not a sin. We're not talking about sin or character issues. But I guess this leads us to our next and final section here. I read Donald Miller's book, Story. It's a little bit of marketing he's talking about. And he talks about what a story is. And a story is a character. And let's call that character you or I, who wants something. And let's call that thing that we want a good relationship or healthy living in general. A good relationship, either with friends, with family, with God. And that person encounters a problem before they can encounter that good relationship or that healthy living. The problem in this scenario is social media. At the peak of their despair, a guide steps into their lives, gives them a plan, and calls them to action. That action helps them to avoid failure and ends in success. So, for the next few minutes, allow Ryan and I to be that guide and to offer some steps and give you a plan and call you in some way to action. Do you have any thoughts, Ryan, on what it means to be healthy in regards to social media?
Yeah, so first of all, what I'm about to say, again, like you said it right. Social media is not sinful. I don't think it's wrong to even have a social media account. But I think at the very least, we have to be very careful about the way that we use it and the way that we approach it. Because, some people have said this about technology, and I'm in IT, so I hear people talking about technology, like I hear pastors talking about technology. Well, as long as you use technology for God's glory, then it'll all be okay, right? And technically that's true, but it's way more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like nuclear weapons, right? Sorry, I know that's a jump, but we're jumping. So,
you just jumped the shark.
Nuclear weapons, right? People can say all day, right, that, oh, well, technology has no moral value, until a human being uses it, and then he imputes that moral value on with the technology or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? But that, the very fact that nuclear weapons exist is a threat to human existence on this planet, in this galaxy, this universe, right?
Yes.
And it's also, the fact that nuclear weapons exist is a love issue. Like, there is absolutely no practical reason for nuclear weapons to exist that allow us to like love other people. All they can lead to at all is suffering. Like, even storing them is bad. It's bad for the environment. Even having them, it's already bad, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like with modern technology, it is no longer possible to say that technology is amoral. That is, it has no moral value. The technology itself, because of the ways in which it is intended to be used from the people that own it and the people who kind of like receive whatever the technology puts out, all of that has value because technology has such wide-ranging effects. Now, could you say that about a bow and arrow? Maybe. I don't know. That's another question for another time. But I think Facebook itself, just the fact that it exists, does have some sort of value. I'm not going to tell you what that is because I don't know that I can encapsulate that. But anyway, so I think if you want to just do the safe thing, like just don't use social media. Like if you don't want to experience any of those negative effects, you don't want to delve into the trade-offs. Hey, what's good about this? What's bad? How can I maximize the good things about this and avoid all the bad things? I do think there is a way, and Marty actually brought this up earlier. Now, Facebook, for instance, does this. I'm not really sure about all these other social media networks, but Facebook, I know you can do this. In your settings on Facebook, you can actually set up an email that either triggers the moment something happens, or you can trigger it to be daily or weekly or whatever, of particular information that you want to receive. So that can be about particular people, it can be about particular Facebook pages. You can decide to not get any notifications about people posting videos or photos if that's what you don't want. And maybe you only get like the life updates or the birthday reminders, right? Mm-hmm. So people can customize this. So that's one way you can get around it. I've seen people do. And so what people do is they'll get the email. Yeah. They remove the Facebook app from their phones. They're not constantly taking it out. They promise themselves, I'm not even going to go on Facebook on my phone anymore. I'm only going to access Facebook through this daily or weekly email I get, right? And I'm only going to look at the stuff that's in the email, and that's it. And so that's one way you can very, very tightly control sort of what you're taking in. Facebook still gets a little bit of that ad revenue, so they're happy, and it all sort of works out that way. But the problem is, I think most people cannot control themselves with it. They will click one of those links in the email, and then they'll start clicking around, and they're right back to where they started. They've reinstalled Facebook on their phone because it's just easier that way. And so I decided I'm just going to get rid of it all. And there's a Netflix show called The Social Dilemma, which actually talks a lot about what we're talking about today, which if you have not watched The Social Dilemma yet and you have Netflix, please watch it. That it's actually really well done. And I think they try to they started off trying to paint a fair picture. You can even see this in the end credits. They started off by trying to paint a fair picture, and they just couldn't. They could not justify what these social networks are doing. So please watch that. But that was part of my story. I watched that earlier on in the summer. And then one of my friends actually left Facebook, and he put out a post and said, hey, I'm leaving. I'm sort of addicted to this, so I might be back, honestly, but I would like to leave entirely. And I saw and I was like, dang, that's really inspiring. And so I was thinking about it for a couple weeks. And by the beginning of August, I thought to myself, you know what? I think I really need to do this as well. So I basically told all my friends that on September 1st, I'm getting rid of it. I put those couple of Facebook posts out there and got rid of all my social media. And so, and my friends, a lot of my close friends were like, no, don't get rid of it. We're all on here. what about our Facebook thread about, we have this Facebook thread for this video game or this Facebook thread for this thing, right? And so I'm like, we can just have a text thread. Like there's no reason to even do this,
Yeah.
And so so they had a harder time, but then later on, like right before I left Facebook, I think they started to realize with like 3 or 4 days left to go, they knew I was serious. And one of my friends was actually like deeply offended that I would leave, and this person. But he was sort of like poking fun at me. And then with a couple days left to go, he was just mad that I would leave. He's like, well, this is going to be really inconvenient for me, Ryan. Like that was sort of the was sort of the feeling. And
Wow.
so that
I assume your friend has a phone.
Oh yes.
Okay, all right.
So trust me, I went there with him. And so anyway, so I got off of social media on September 1st, and since then there have been a couple times where I've missed it, especially earlier on. One time I forgot somebody's last name. I could not remember their last name, and normally I would just take my phone out, and look up their last name really quickly, but I couldn't do it, and I was in a meeting at work, and so I had to tell this person, I was like, Jake, I don't remember your last name. Like I had to have one of those things, which remember, before social media, this kind of thing would happen all the time, and people were very, chill about it. And and to be fair, people are still chill about it. He's like, well, that's fine. It's whatever his last name was. I don't remember it now again. So we're back to that. But so can I just, before I go through a few things that I noticed after I left, did you have anything to add, Marty?
Well, I would say that the thing that has mostly really
you're my friend
inspired
too.
me.
Have you noticed any difference? Like
I mean, to be fair, we live close,
right,
and connect to the same church. That being said, we play Xbox together, right? And so there's that, and although we haven't been playing, so maybe it's affected my first-person shooter game, which is horrible in the first place. But in the last 3 days, like it's been 72 hours, right? Which is not and I have not made decisions to leave Facebook or social media. However, I'm thinking and contemplating this idea of what to lose, what to keep, and I'm right in the thick of this. And what I'm seeing is really kind of intense, because I believe that we are shaping a generation behind us that is going to be completely addicted to this technology and will not be compelled or have the skills to be able to get unaddicted. So many of us in my generation were not a part of this technology, right? So we understood that there was life before, and it was fine. And there are things that technology helps us with and whatnot, but a new generation, my kids only know this technology. And what I see personally is my kids really, more than they want the technology, they want their parents, right? However, a lot of times we have put ourselves in a scenario where we're just not going to give it up, which means they are not going to give it up. Now, if I'm bringing this to this thinking through the next generation, there's a young lady in our youth group here at Chaffin. She has had 5 friends attempt suicide in the last 2 months. Now, I don't have stats on me right now, but I promise you, and I think maybe you don't have them.
I do.
Yeah, okay. They are unbelievable in regards to the amount of, and I'll let you describe it in a few minutes, anxiety and depression that are happening in our teenagers now. And we have to do something about that. We have to. we have to do something about that app that keeps.
What is that?
it's my cameras outside, right? It's like outside of my
okay.
house, and so we have to do something about it. We have to get off, and we have to be present. I feel like, and then I'll live this up. I feel like when I was younger, my parents were really strict, right? And so I grew up differently. And as a young adult, I didn't drink. So when I would go to parties and I didn't drink, I was the odd man out.
Mm-hmm.
Where like everyone was drinking, and the more a group of people drink around you, the more they kind of ignore the person who isn't drinking, right?
Mm-hmm.
At those parties. And I feel like the last 3 days, when I'm around a group of people and people are on their phones, I feel like I'm that guy again. Like everyone's kind of on their phones and flicking, and I haven't been the last couple of days, and I feel good about that, but I feel convicted about that mostly because we have to do something for our next generation. You parent, you leader, you person of influence, we have to do something.
Amen. Yeah, definitely. So the stat that I wrote down, so there was the 2018 British study on young people, and basically young people being teenagers, and they found that there was a 250% increase in the depression that they found in teens who used social media heavily, and a 185% increase in anxiety in teens who used social media heavily. So, and then and there are many other studies on adults too, which have found similar things. This isn't just like a group of silly little teens who can't control themselves and this happens. This is like everyone. It is not good for our minds. Is what the data is telling us. So along with that, so I found a couple things after I left social media. I just wanted to talk about the benefits that I experienced quickly. So one is just, my social connections are fewer, but the ones that I have remaining, they're higher quality. Like I'm connecting more deeply with people that are actually more immediately proximate to me. So people who are closer to me. I'm much closer, and I'm finding it easier to sort of build out those relationships in a deeper way. So, and again, Facebook is a great tool for being friends with lots of people, but it doesn't necessarily promote the deepness of those relationships. So, and just sort of as an add-on to that, one thing, I wrote this down because I just think this is sort of a funny thing. I don't have to apologize for not connecting with as many people anymore. Like if I'm on social media and I run into someone at a coffee shop, I used to have to say, "Oh, I'm sorry we haven't connected," because when you're on social media, it literally takes 2 seconds to connect with someone,
Yeah.
But now that I'm not on social media, I don't have to start that conversation by being like, "Hey, sorry we've lost touch," or "Sorry I've been MIA," because the truth is, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry that we've lost touch.
Yeah.
Because my lack of social media, it's reduced my capacity to maintain a high number of acquaintances, but that's by design. I've designed it to be that way. And it's really, I'm starting to think of this now, like it's not even useful for me to have that many connections. Like, do I need 1,200? I don't need that,
I mean, 2,400 for me.
Okay. And as much as I like myself, and think I'm a great guy, it's probably really not even that useful for them to be connected with me either. Like if we're really being honest here. So I think there's definitely a such thing as like too much of a good thing. So that's the way I'd like to phrase that one. Another thing is I use my phone a lot less. Like I said, I'm down to like 15, 20 minutes a day. And that includes, like what we talked about last week, the dating app that I use, 15, 20 minutes a day. It's not very much.
Yeah.
And then sort of as an outcome of some of those things that I've noticed, I have a lot more like motivation. Like I'm able to get out of bed more quickly in the morning because I've actually moved my phone across the room. Because I no longer, I'm no longer on my phone, as I go to bed or when I wake up in the morning. I don't lay in bed for an hour in the morning, which I was doing regularly.
Yes.
Just scrolling Facebook.
I mean, I don't know that.
And other things.
I was doing the same thing.
And so now my phone is across the room, so my alarm goes off. I have to get up and go get it, to turn the alarm off.
Very nice.
And and also the screen time at night, it negatively affects your sleep. So I'm sleeping better. Marty's apparently not sleeping better.
I don't know what's happening here. This is awesome.
He has his volume all the way down, and the chimes are still going off.
It just they'll get you. They want you.
They will get you. So anyway, so one of the last things I wanted to mention is that so Steve Jobs, who played a pivotal role in helping to create the iPhone. The iPhone was not Steve Jobs' idea, as many people have wrongly assumed. It was. I mean, he's a key player in bringing it to the market for sure.
Right.
But it was not Steve Jobs' idea. But here's what I think is really interesting. So the guy who did all of these exciting keynotes, and millions of people are buying, hundreds of millions, that like literally billions of people are buying these phones every year. That man did not allow his children to not just, it wasn't like he was just limiting their use of their iPhone. He didn't even allow them to have an iPhone. He didn't want them to have a smartphone in general, so they have to walk around with flip phones. The guy who created, right, like, and how much of a just like a statement is that, right? The fact that the creator of them does not allow his children to use them. And so and now I'm assuming Steve Jobs' children are very smart and they have done probably very well for themselves. I don't really keep up on that kind of thing, but I feel like, Marty, you've read more about Steve Jobs than I have.
Well, so Steve Jobs specifically, that wasn't about social media. Interestingly enough, it was about electronics.
It's about electronics.
The negative effects that showcases that research had been done that showcased the negative effects on children as they increase their use of electronics, and so that was I suppose in that sense it'd be even more strict, right? So that wasn't about social media, that was about the entire gamut. Right. And I think, as we finish up here, the things that you've said and the things that we've talked about are really exactly right. And we as a civilization, as a group of people, and as a church, have to discuss this and figure out how can we connect together and do so as naturally as possible and be present when we are together. If Steve Jobs didn't let his kids use iPads and use this technology for a particular purpose because it showcased the negative effects on children with the increased use of electronics, that means by default there must be some positive things that come from growing up and from being present naturally with people. Now, once again, you can have manipulation. Mm-hmm. You can have dysfunction with presence. However, I think what we're experiencing is something that we've opened Pandora's box, and we have got to ask ourselves: is this the direction we want to continue to head as a follower of Jesus and as a group of people who really are called to spread good news, to spread the gospel? And if we're not careful, we will be in big trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I know we just went over the hour mark here, but I just want to say again, what Marty said is great. It's right. And I like that you used the word, we need to discuss this. So
Yeah.
we are not saying you have to go out. Again, we said it before. We're going to say it again as
Yeah.
a disclaimer. Using social media is not sin. It is not. We're not saying that it is.
We're
it
not
is-
becoming fighting fundamentalists
Yes, we're
on
not.
this topic.
We're not doing that. But we're raising questions. That's really our intent here. Our intent is to raise questions, and just because I got rid of social media again doesn't mean you have to. But at least ask yourself that question, like honestly answered if you can.
Yeah.
You know, is my use of social media healthy for me and my community?
So what we'd love to do is you to participate in this conversation. If you wouldn't mind emailing us, or you can go on YouTube and throw out a question or a thought about your use, or on the Chaffin Church Podcast social media page. Once again, we're just showing that we're not anti, well, I'm not. But we also want to continue a discussion around this and see if we can better ourselves as much as possible. That's all the time we got for today. Thank you for joining us. Please, I feel bad saying subscribe. Subscribe to our
It's like
podcast.
such a dirty word now.
Right.
Yeah.
Subscribe, review, share it, and or just tell people about it. Word of mouth. How about that?
Yeah.
And hey, this has been good news. Did I say that right?
That's been our good news for today.
Now go and give some out.